Hey guys, it's Dr. Traveler here, and I am giving the little intro. Now, I was able to do my first interview. Don't think that it's a cheap shot. I interviewed my dad. I had to kind of warm up. This interview thing is brand new to me, but I've got some others scheduled that should be really awesome. And so I wanted to give my dad's intro. I already had done the interview, but I just wanted to talk about some of the things that he has done. He's been very active in scouting for Boy Scouts of America and also in his church service. And so anyway, I'll read some of his accomplishments. He, as a youth, he received his Eagle Scout and was very active in the Order of the Arrow as well. He was, as an adult, he was an explorer advisor, a scoutmaster. He was a scout coordinator. He was on Wood Badge staff, which is training for adult leaders as well, and also various training staffs on District Roundtable Commissioner, Vanguard District Camporees. He trained the trainer and Scoutorama. He also was a merit badge counselor for several merit badges. He served on troop committees, district advancement chairman for 15 years. He played the role of Baden Powell, which I had the opportunity many times to help him do that. But Baden Powell was the founder of Scouting, and he would dress up and go around and do presentations, and that was a lot of fun. He attended Philmont Scout Training Camp with our family. We went there for a family vacation. He was an assistant scoutmaster and scoutmaster for 2 national scout jamborees. He was the old Juniper District Finance Chairman and Trapper Trails Council Executive Board. Awards: he received the District Award of Merit. He received his Wood Badge beads. He also was a recipient of the Silver Beaver Award, as well as the ELI Gavel. Within his church, so serving on a church basis, he was a missionary in the Japan Fukuoka Mission. He was a bishopric counselor over youth. He served as a bishop. He served as a second counselor in the stake presidency. He also served as mission president in the Japan Nagoya Mission. He was YSA stake president, and he now is a stake patriarch, which is in charge of giving patriarchal blessings, which is a great thing. Other service to youth: he was a coach and a referee in badminton, basketball. There you go. He coached youth soccer for many years. He was my coach for many years. He was Cub River Sports Complex Board of Governors over finances. And as far as education, he did mention some of this during the interview, but he received his bachelor's degree in civil engineering at Utah State University, and he also received his master's degree, his MBA, from Utah State University. In his professional career, he was a facilities engineer for Presto Products for 5 years. He was the engineer manager at Thiokol Corporation, which is now called ATK, for 11 years, and he has been serving as a manager and director at Icon Health and Fitness, where he has been there for 17 years. I also mentioned in my interview that my dad is my hero, and so I esteem that as my number one. I appreciate him taking the time during our holiday break to sit down and talk with me. I wouldn't say that he was nervous, but he said this was a brand new experience for him. He's had many interviews, but never one quite like this, so I think he did a great job, and I love him very much. And so here is the interview with my dad. Hey, this is Dr. Traveler, and as I said in the intro, I've got my first interview here, and it's my dad. He agreed. I've got to try to get used to this interviewing people, and so anyway, I just wanted to kick it off with this, and I'm actually pretty honored to be with him. And I've explained to him kind of what we're doing in here, but for those of you who it may be the first time listening to this podcast or webcast, this is Dr. Run, Think, Pray. I'm Dr. Traveler, Justin Traveler, and the purpose of our podcast and webcast is really to help people be physically, mentally, and spiritually healthy. And so what I wanted to do is just talk to a number of different people about what they do to be physically, mentally, and spiritually healthy. And so here's my dad. And again, neither one of us have kind of warmed up to this. This is the first time, and I always say you take your first time going around and do your very best. So we'll start with kind of I don't know if you even remember what you wrote on your intro, because I didn't read it to him. He sent it to me, but I want to maybe elaborate a little bit on your intro and tell us maybe a little bit about yourself physically, mentally, and spiritually, just so that we can kind of get an idea. What are maybe give us an introduction to you. What makes you physically, we'll say, and then we'll go mentally and then spiritually. Tell us about what makes you.
Okay. Well, I've always enjoyed being active, physically active. When I was very young, I was involved in the Boy Scouts program, Boy Scouts of America, and I liked camping and the activities that went along with that and a lot of the active merit badges. And so I enjoyed that. I also enjoyed sports. I never considered myself an amazing athlete, an elite athlete, but I enjoyed participating. I like to push myself to do my very, very best, regardless of what sport I was doing. And I enjoyed the team aspect of sports as well as individual sports. So kind of a combination. So I've always enjoyed that. I carried that in from my youth into adulthood. For many years, I did a lot of running. I didn't really compete for a long time. I didn't do any formal official races, but I just enjoyed running. I had about a 5-mile course that I'd try and do several times a week, and sometimes even longer, and just did it for fun. And then later on, as life went on, I decided I wanted to do some marathons. I'd had some issues with, a few physical issues, but I felt like I'd kind of worked through them to the point where I wanted to train and do more formal races and even do marathons. And so I did several 5Ks, some 10Ks, half marathons, and I had a goal of being running several marathons and qualifying for the Boston Marathon, but I had a problem. I had some knees injuries kind of when I was involved in some of my activities as a youth, and so my knees had some weakness in them. And as I started to push myself and condition and go through a rigorous program to prepare for the marathon, I had a challenge keeping my knees strong and not having problems with them, a lot of pain and so forth. And so I did several steps, acupuncture, different things. I'd ice them. Took supplements and did a lot of things to try and help it. And eventually I did one marathon, but my knees just went very bad right just as I was preparing during the last days of my preparation. So I got through the marathon, but then I found out I had bone spurs on my knees and arthritis and bone spurs. And so I was advised by medical professionals that I shouldn't keep doing that, keep pounding my knees that way. So I started biking. It was hard for me to make a transition because I loved to run. It did a lot for me, as we're talking here, physically and mentally and spiritually. When I had, I'm going to kind of tie into that. When I used to run, if I had something I needed to prepare for, a talk to give in my church assignments and so forth, I could go out and run, and my head would clear, and I'd come back and I'd have the talk all prepared. But anyway, so I had to make a transition, and it was kind of hard, but I decided I could bike and it wouldn't bother my knees. So kind of make a long story short, I started biking, and that was about maybe 8 years ago, and so in this last 8 years, I've done a lot of biking, and I've participated in the Logan to Jackson bike race, the longest sanctioned bike race in the U.S. It's 206 miles from Logan, Utah to Jackson, Wyoming. Hence, it's called LOTUJA, and I have participated in that several times, both individually and then also as teams a few different times. And so now that's what keeps me going. But all during the winter, I keep spinning. I keep doing things regularly, several times a week. I try to every day except for Sunday get some really good physical exercise in. So that's kind of a long answer as far as my physical part. And I talked about the mental part. I've always felt the importance of learning, not only things of the world, I guess you'd say, secular. I completed a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in college, but I've always enjoyed learning. I've enjoyed learning things about the gospel of Jesus Christ, and I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I've always enjoyed studying the scriptures and learning that way. But I also recognize the importance of learning about other things of the world as well, and so I've always tried to do that. But again, I tie a lot of it, the mental and the physical. I really couldn't separate a lot of times because it did for me as much mentally to either run or bike or do these different things as much mentally as it does physically. And far as the spirit, my life really revolves around my beliefs in the gospel of Jesus Christ, and so I try to do things that help me to feel like I'm in tune with the Spirit, and that I maintain be at peace with myself, peace with those around me, and peace with God, and so I've always served. And done my very best as I've been asked to serve in different positions in my church, and it's I really like this concept of tying the mental, the physical, and spiritual together, because I believe it can't be separated, and I find that if I have balance in those three areas in my life, I feel good about myself. But when I get maybe kind of overboard, I guess, or fanatical in one area, that the other parts of my life are not in balance, or my life's not in balance because the other parts of my life are not where they should be. So I strongly believe the importance of having all three in balance.
Perfect. See, now you can maybe kind of see where I get some of my beliefs. As I talk, I've kind of picked up a lot of things from my parents, and so I hope this isn't too much redundancy, because as I talk and give, again, what I say is my views and things like that, it does sound very similar, and for good reason. Now, I do have some questions, though, that I've never really asked my dad, and so we'll see where some of these can go. And the next question that I have is your why? Right? So if you could say, what is your why? What is the purpose? What gets you up every day? What if you could pick one thing that kind of picks you up and gets you going every day, what would that be?
The first thing I do my exercise in the morning, and again, in the summers, as now biking is my big thing now, as I've said, and I get up in the summer. I get up, whether it's summer or winter, I get up at 5:30, and I go out and bike. In the summer, it's 20 to 30 miles during weekdays and longer than that on a Saturday. And now in the winter, I have a spin bike in an exercise room that I've got, and I still get up at 5:30, and I put in an hour to an hour and a half on that every day, and longer on Saturday. So some days it's kind of hard to get up, but I am motivated because I feel it starts my day better when I can get up and exercise hard, and again I start thinking about what's going on in my life. I actually watch the news often during some of that time, and that's really the only television I really watch. But I like to keep up on what's going on in the world. But a lot of times I'll just turn that off because I'm thinking about other things that I need to be doing. And so that's the motivator for me to get up and do that. And when I can get up and work hard and build up a good sweat, it makes me feel better about getting going that day.
Okay. And I want you to go a little bit more, though, in depth. So obviously biking, and you want to be physically, mentally, and spiritually. But I'm saying overall. So if you were to pick one thing in your entire life, you've talked about why, that you get up early and that drives you, and then you've wanted to get an education, and then you work hard. You work hard in service in your church callings and things like that. And that's why I said this is kind of a tough one to answer, I guess. But if you were to, again, your purpose and your why that encompasses everything. I was talking to him earlier. I was reading a book, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of the book. I'll have to reference it maybe in the notes. But he lived in Japan multiple times. He was a missionary there for 2 years, and then a mission president. And I had read this book about having your ikigai, right? Your purpose that follows you for your entire life. So I guess that's more. What do you think that purpose? So if you were to say what gets you up and has you do the physical, the mental, and the spiritual, what is there one thing, multiple things? If there is one, what would that be?
Well, I've got to tie the spiritual part into this. Is I have a strong belief in God, as I said, and I believe that our purpose, this life, is a test, and we're here we gain a physical body, and our purpose here in this life is to learn to control our physical body so that we're in control, and we make the most out of the physical body that we've been given, but at the same time we also develop mentally and spiritually. So ultimately it's it's my belief in God that really drives me to do what I do, because I believe God has sent us to this earth to make the most of it, to not idle our time away, to utilize our time wisely in doing good, in developing ourselves so that we can be of service to others around us. And I believe that that's what motivates me to get up, because the longer we stay in bed, that's a time that we're not able to get up and either be doing good or preparing ourselves in other ways that we can go accomplish the good things that I think Heavenly Father, that God has intended us to do while we're here on this earth.
Okay. I like it. Okay. Well, the next question that I wanted to ask is the struggle. Obviously, the struggle is what makes you become strong. And you had mentioned some struggles that you'd had physically with your knees. But is there a time maybe that stood out in your life that you had to struggle through and fight through that helped you either physically, mentally, or spiritually that you could talk about that you overcame? Is there a time that stands out? And this could be a hard answer, but is there one? And again, no warm-ups, right? So this is off the cuff. We'll see where this goes.
Well, that is a difficult question. I have some. well, it's very, very personal, and I guess that's why I would have a hard time with that. I guess I'll answer. There are two different times. I've already talked about it. When I'm a goal setter. I set goals. In fact, I drive my wife crazy because I set goals, and I'm so committed that sometimes I lack flexibility. There are times that maybe I need to be a little more flexible. I can set the goals and determine the things that I want to do. I'm a list. I make lists of things that I need to accomplish in a particular day or week or whatever. And when I don't do those things, sometimes it throws me off, and it just throws off my system, I guess. And I need to be more flexible. But I guess when I said when I was preparing for running and marathons, I had goals of running the Boston Marathon, and I didn't, and because of the physical setback, and I really struggled with that because, not only that, but I loved running. I had a hard time making the transition from running to biking because it didn't do as much for me mentally either. I had to focus. When you're biking, you have to pay more attention to everything around, and you can't just let your mind free to think about other things like running does. And so that was a real hard time for me, and I guess in every way, physically, especially physically and mentally, but spiritually as well. So that was one. But again, there have been times in my life, and I'm not going to go into detail because it's very personal, but I felt like maybe I wanted to always be in a position to serve God the way that He needed me to serve. And I've always been very involved, again, within my church and activities there. And there have been times that I've questioned whether some of my career choices and things that I've done in my life has really put me into the position that I needed to be to serve Him the way I should. And so I was totally committed to it, but that's been kind of a challenge for me to work through that too, to question. But I believe in prayer and through continuing to do my best with whatever I'm asked, what I feel like Heavenly Father asks me to do through others who are in authority. I've done that, and I've continued to pray and do my very best at what I've been asked, and so I've been able to work through that. But there have been times that's been difficult for me.
Yeah. Okay, I was going to ask this question later, but I think that after that I'm going to jump a little bit ahead, and I'll come back to some other questions. But okay, so if you could go back to, say, well, let's pick 21. 21's a nice age. So if you could go back and now you're 21. Now, I'm of the belief that everything happens for a purpose. So I don't like to say, what would you change, right? Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't say, what would you change? What would you do different? But the question is, and again, this is kind of tough, so if you need to think for just a second, what would you tell your 21-year-old self? If you could go back knowing what you know now, what would you tell your 21-year-old self? I know that's a hard one.
That's a really. I guess the thing that the biggest thing would be whatever pathway you choose, as far as be a family. I'm married. I have 5 children. My wonderful son is right here next to me. And I have one daughter older than him, but he's the oldest son. I have 2 sons, 3 daughters. We have 19 grandchildren. I love my family. I've had a lot of good experiences through my education, through my through my career, my occupation, but I've had, challenges too. I guess the one thing I would say then, whatever path you choose, whether in your family, in your career, in your education, in anything else that you do, strive to find joy in what you do. Because there's sometimes, if I look back on it, I guess it's not strong regrets, but sometimes I feel like maybe I just have had to grind it out sometimes and carry a burden maybe sometimes, and I did things that needed to be done, but I had sometimes had a hard time finding the joy in it. And I believe that we're here on this earth to have joy. Now, everything's not going to be pleasant all the time, but I think, there's a combination. Joy is related to your attitude, and so maintain the best attitude you can have. And while you're on the journey, don't always be looking for something else to make you happy, but find joy in the moment. And I think that's probably the best advice I would give.
Perfect. I like that. Okay. My next question is, and again, you've hit on some of this a little bit already, but so I always say our health is our habits, right? So physically, mentally, and spiritually. If you want to be physically healthy, you've got to have good habits. Mentally healthy, the same thing. So I want your short list of habits. So maybe one or two. So if you could pick one or two habits, physically, mentally, and spiritually, what are the habits that help you to be the healthiest, in your opinion?
Okay. Physically, again, is daily exercise and eating. Now, maybe this is the wrong time to be asking this because it was Thanksgiving, and
that's what we're here on Thanksgiving break. That's when we're doing this.
Yeah, and I kind of let down a little bit, but again, it's back to that thing. Don't be fanatical. Sometimes we can be so fanatical about our eating that maybe we make those around us almost uncomfortable if we're not willing to just join in, because there's a lot of sociality. There's a lot of I guess bonding that takes place when we eat.
Sure.
But I think we need to control it. So I would say the one besides the exercise is trying to eat healthy. And when I say healthy, I'm not fanatical about it, but I try to eat, a good share of vegetables. I try to avoid sugars, try and hold down on carbohydrates as much as I can, breads and so forth, and just eat healthy. I'm not fanatical about the weight that I'm at, but at the same time, I know that there's a certain weight that I feel comfortable with, that if I'm exercising right and eating right, I can kind of maintain a particular weight. And so that's the barometer for me. It's not necessarily, well, sure, I like to look good, but at the same time, I feel better if I can do that. So those are the two things physically. Mentally, I think the habits are try and increase your knowledge daily. I read daily from, as I said, scriptures. I do that, but there are other good books that I read, other resources. I take the newspaper. I try to keep up on the things that are going on in the world and being involved that way. Again, not to get sucked into things that I feel are going to make me feel negative, but I look at it from the standpoint as, how can the knowledge that I'm gaining help me to be a better person, help society, help those around me? And so, because I think that continuing to learn and grow in the knowledge that we have is an important part. And so daily, I think that's important. And then I guess spiritually, habits would be daily prayer, personal prayer, pray as a family, and also study the scriptures together, and make things of a spiritual nature a part of our life, a discussion within our homes especially, and if you have those opportunities with outside of your home, whether it be at work or wherever, I realize that there are things that we need to be politically correct in, and use discretion there, but don't be afraid to talk about or address things that are spiritual on a daily basis. But the habits would be, I think, the prayer and scripture study that we do individually, especially, and as a family.
Awesome. Perfect. Okay, my next question, and I know, I have a little bit of an advantage here because I know my dad, he likes poems and quotes and things like that. So again, putting him on the spot a little bit, but I know he's got some in the bag already. So what would be your favorite, if you could just say in this very moment, favorite quote or maybe poem, something that you've memorized? What's your favorite?
Okay, I'd say my favorite one is I call it The Summit. I think it might just be called The Poem. I'm not even sure the official title of it, but it's by the author of it is Rene Damal, and it goes this. I can quote it. It's short. It goes like this: "One cannot stay on the summit forever. One has to come down again. So why bother in the first place? Just this: what is above knows what is below, but what is below does not know what is above. One climbs, one sees, one descends, one sees no longer, but one has seen. There is an art of conducting oneself in the lower regions by the memory of what one saw higher up. What one can no longer see, one can at least still know."
I love that one. That's actually mine too. And I didn't even know he was going to say that one, so I got that one. He had me memorize that a long time ago, I think when I was a freshman in high school, and I've had that memorized ever since. So, told you. I hope this isn't just all copycat of what I say. I'm learning a lot, about my dad. I feel like I knew a lot of it, but it's good to hear. Okay, we're getting kind of towards the end. So if you were to pick some resources, okay, so if you were to give some advice for people to go searching. So for you, a book, a person to follow, just knowledge. Where do you get your knowledge from? If you were to give them a short list of people or books or resources, what would be some of those?
Again, a lot of my subjects are, a lot of my topics that I study and I look at are, if it's from a spiritual standpoint, again, being a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I go to LDS.org. And there are things there. I like to listen to general conference talks over and over, not only current ones, but past. And I know Justin does that same thing, probably even more effectively than I do. But there are a lot of subjects like that I would turn to. But I'm the internet, Google, we get a lot of it gets varying reviews. There are some that say it's fantastic. Some say it's just so evil. Well, it is. It's whatever you want to find. But I am grateful to live at a time when, if I want to know about a particular subject, I can Google it, and I'm looking for positive things. Like, for example, we love to travel, and if I'm going to go to a new country or a new city, I've got a lot of goals of travel places that I've been but want to go. But if I'm going somewhere, I can look up and I can find all kinds of information about that particular area. So, so that I think I'm just grateful that we live in a time when information is available like that. And so, if there was one particular book, other than my scriptures, I'm not sure if there's a particular author or a particular book that that's just really guided my life. I guess growing up, I would say the Boy Scout Handbook, because I've always been so involved with that, and so that, that's been a great resource for me. But I read different books, and by different people, and so there's not any one in particular.
Okay. All right. Okay. This is my last question. Okay. And I'm gonna kind of verbalize it in maybe two different ways. So the short question is really, what is the influence that you'd like to have on the world, just in general, so your kids or the entire world? Or I guess a nice way of putting that is, so at your funeral, what do you want said about you?
I would want said that, well, first of all, that I had a strong belief in God and a testimony of Jesus Christ and his mission, his atonement, the atonement of Jesus Christ. And then I would want it to be said that I practiced what I preached, that I lived what I believed, and I was consistent in what I believed. Whatever circumstance I was in, that people could count on me, they could trust me enough that the values that I claimed that I stood for and I strived to stand for were very consistent, and then that had a positive influence. I would hope that I would have an influence on my family and others such that they would have hope in the future and look forward to a future with a bright hope, and that there are good things ahead, and that many things that can continue to be accomplished. So in the midst of the challenges of the world, I would hope that my interaction with people would help them to look forward with hope, and know that there is a good life ahead, and that so that I touch them in some way for good to help them on their journey through life.
Awesome. Okay, well, I love you. I got to interview my hero on my first go about, so sorry, I get the tears from him too, and my mom. So love you, Dad. Thank you.
Love you. Love you.
All right, everybody. And this is Dr. Traveler and Bruce Traveler, my dad, and we're signing out. Guys, thanks for checking out Dr. Run, Think, Pray. Please like, please subscribe, comment below. If you have any questions, let me know. And always remember to be healthier today than you were yesterday. Be healthier tomorrow than you were today. And this is Dr. Traveler signing out.